The humiliation. The Galactic Assembly hull floated in the void between star systems, a massive structure built from crystallized dark matter that shimmered with colors no human eye should have been able to perceive. Yet Ambassador Michael Torres saw it clearly as his shuttle approached, his augmented vision picking up wavelengths that would have been invisible to his ancestors. The structure had been built 12,000 years before humans had even discovered fire, a monument to civilizations that considered themselves the rightful rulers of the cosmos. Michael adjusted his collar one final time as the shuttle docked. He was a tall man with weathered features that spoke of too many sleepless nights and difficult decisions. His simple gray suit looked almost primitive compared to the elaborate garments worn by other species representatives, but that was intentional. Earth had learned long ago that appearing unthreatening often provided strategic advantages. The assembly chamber itself was breathtaking in its scale. Thousands of delegates from 643 different species occupied floating platforms arranged in concentric circles around a central speaking stage. Some delegates breathed oxygen like humans. Others required methane, ammonia, or even liquid mercury environments, each contained within shimmering force fields that allowed them to coexist in the same space. Michael's platform carried him and his two assistants toward the center stage. Dr. Sarah Kim, Earth's chief scientist, stood to his left, her fingers nervously adjusting her data pad. Commander James Wilson, military liaison, stood to his right, his posture rigid and alert. Neither spoke as they descended toward the speaking platform where 643 civilizations would judge humanity's worth. The chamber fell silent as Michael reached the central stage. He could feel thousands of eyes, and other sensory organs, focusing on him. Some species communicated through color changes in their skin. Others through electromagnetic pulses. But all of them understood the translation field that would carry his words to every corner of the vast chamber. Michael cleared his throat and began. Honored members of the Galactic Assembly, I am Ambassador Michael Torres, representing the planet Earth and the human species. For 75 years, humanity has observed the laws of this assembly. We have paid our tribute, restricted our expansion, and limited our technological development according to the treaties we signed upon first contact. He paused, letting the translation field catch up. In the silence, he could hear the subtle hum of the station systems and the occasional click or whistle from various alien species communicating among themselves. We come before you today to request elevation from provisional member status to full voting membership in the Galactic Assembly. We believe humanity has demonstrated responsibility, restraint, and respect for the galactic community. We have contributed significantly to scientific research, cultural exchange, and peacekeeping operations. We ask only for the same rights and privileges granted to all full member species. The silence that followed Michael's words stretched for several long seconds. Then, from somewhere in the upper tiers, came a sound like grinding metal mixed with harsh laughter. It belonged to Supreme Counselor Vrathkar, a member of the Zelthanian Dominion, a species that resembled massive armored beetles with too many legs. Did the primitive actually request full membership? Vrathkar's voice boomed through the translation field, dripping with contempt. The species that has existed on the galactic stage for less than a single Zelthanian lifetime believes it deserves to vote on matters affecting civilizations millions of years old. More laughter rippled through the chamber. Michael felt Sarah tense beside him, but he kept his expression neutral, his hands relaxed at his sides. Counselor Seraph, an ethereal being composed of living light, chimed in with a voice like crystal bells. Humans discovered faster-than-light travel only 75 years ago. They still use chemical propulsion for planetary launches. Their medical technology cannot even prevent cellular aging. By what measure do they consider themselves ready for full membership? They eat other living creatures, added Representative Quilks of the Harmonious Collective, his tentacles writhing with apparent disgust. They consume flesh torn from animals. How can we trust the judgment of carnivorous primitives? The chamber erupted in what could only be described as derisive amusement. Different species expressed mockery in their own ways, color changes, sound emissions, pheromone releases that the translation field converted into comprehensible contempt. Michael waited for the noise to die down before speaking again. We acknowledge that humanity is young compared to many species here. But youth does not necessarily mean incompetence. We have contributed valuable research in quantum field manipulation, adaptive artificial intelligence, and biological regeneration. Our cultural works have been well received across multiple systems. We have participated in 17 peacekeeping missions without incident. Participated as foot soldiers, interrupted Vrathkar. As cannon fodder for missions too dangerous for valuable species. You follow orders well enough, I will grant you that. Like trained animals. More laughter. Michael noticed that not all species were joining in the mockery. Some remained silent, watching with what might have been sympathy or perhaps just curiosity. But the dominant voices in the chamber were those of the ancient civilizations, the ones who had shaped galactic law for eons. High Arbiter Zenthal, leader of the Galactic Assembly and member of a species so old their original homeworld had been consumed by their dying sun 3 million years ago, finally spoke. His form was vaguely humanoid but composed of what appeared to be condensed starlight. His voice carried the weight of absolute authority. The request of Earth has been heard and evaluated. The Assembly finds that humanity lacks the maturity, technological sophistication, and cultural development necessary for full membership at this time. He paused, and Michael felt his heart sink even though he had expected this outcome. However, in recognition of humanity's earnest efforts, we will grant continued provisional membership with updated conditions. Michael's jaw tightened. Updated conditions was code for increased restrictions. Effective immediately, Zenthal continued, the following restrictions will apply to all human activities. First, no human vessel may travel beyond a radius of 50 light-years from Earth without Assembly permission. Second, human colonies beyond the solar system are hereby frozen at current population levels with no new settlements permitted. Third, human access to advanced technologies will be restricted to Level 4 classification only. Sarah gasped audibly beside Michael. Level 4 was barely above what Earth had developed independently. It essentially meant humanity could not advance technologically without Assembly approval. Furthermore, Zenthal added, his starlight form pulsing with each word, Earth's tribute payments will increase by 30% to account for the administrative burden of monitoring human activities more closely. Finally, all human research in quantum mechanics, dimensional physics, and consciousness transfer must cease immediately and all data must be surrendered to the Assembly Science Directorate. The restrictions were devastating. They would essentially freeze human development in place, turning Earth into a permanent client state that could never rise to true equality with other species. This is unacceptable, Michael said, his voice cutting through the murmur of conversation that had started in the chamber. These restrictions are more severe than those placed on any other provisional member in Assembly history. We are being punished not for violations but for the crime of ambition. You are being protected from yourselves, Seraph replied, her light form dimming to a condescending glow. Young species often overreach and destroy themselves. These restrictions ensure humanity's survival by preventing you from accessing technologies you cannot responsibly manage. How long must we remain under these restrictions? Commander Wilson asked, speaking for the first time. What must we do to earn full membership? Vrathkar made the grinding sound that passed for laughter among his species. Perhaps in another 1,000 years, when you have learned proper humility and your violent nature has been tempered by age. If your species survives that long. Personally, I give them 300 years before they destroy their own world, commented another delegate, sparking fresh laughter. Should we establish a betting pool, someone else suggested. Enough, Zenthal commanded, and silence returned. The decision is final. Ambassador Torres, do you accept these terms on behalf of Earth? Michael looked around the chamber at 643 civilizations, most of whom regarded humanity with either contempt or indifference. He thought about Earth, about the billions of humans who had hoped for a different outcome today. He thought about the scientists whose research would be confiscated, the colonists whose dreams of new worlds would be frozen, the children who would grow up in a cage of someone else's making. Then he smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a poker player holding cards no one expected him to have. I accept these terms on behalf of Earth, Michael said clearly. Then he added, for the next 48 hours. Confusion rippled through the chamber. What does that mean? Demanded Vrathkar. It means, Supreme Counselor, that Earth accepts your restrictions for exactly 48 hours, as a courtesy. After that time, humanity will no longer be bound by any assembly treaty, regulation, or restriction. Michael's voice was calm but carried clearly through the translation field. Consider this our official notice of complete withdrawal from the Galactic Assembly. The chamber exploded in chaos. Delegates shouted over each other in hundreds of languages. Some demanded clarification. Others expressed outrage. A few simply stared in shock. You cannot withdraw, Zenthal said, his form blazing brighter with what might have been anger. The treaties you signed upon first contact are binding. Withdrawal without unanimous assembly approval is prohibited under Article 7 of the Galactic Concordat. Article 7 applies to full members, Michael replied. Provisional members, according to Article 3 Section 12, may withdraw with 48 hours notice to allow for orderly transition of responsibilities. We are exercising that right. He could see species frantically checking their data systems, verifying his claim. Sarah had spent 3 months combing through the thousands of pages of assembly law to find that loophole. It existed because the ancient species who wrote the Concordat had never imagined a provisional member would actually want to leave. This is suicide, Seraph said, her voice ringing with what might have been genuine concern. Your species cannot survive without assembly protection in trade networks. You will be vulnerable to pirates, raiders, and rogue nations. Your technology will stagnate. Your colonies will wither. Perhaps, Michael acknowledged. Or perhaps we will thrive on our own, free from restrictions designed to keep us weak and dependent. I suppose we will find out. You are making a mistake, Zenthal warned. The galaxy is dangerous for unprotected species. We offer this protection freely, asking only for reasonable compliance in return. The problem, High Arbiter, is that your definition of reasonable and ours differ significantly. Michael gestured to Sarah and Wilson. We came here in good faith, asking for partnership. You offered subjugation. We decline. He turned to leave, then paused and looked back at the assembled delegates. One more thing. All assembly personnel and assets currently on Earth or within our solar system have 48 hours to depart. After that time, we will consider any foreign presence an act of war. We wish all member species well and hope for peaceful coexistence in the future. But it will be on our terms, not yours. The platform carrying the human delegation began ascending toward the exit. Behind them, the chaos in the chamber grew louder. Threats were shouted. Warnings were issued. Some species actually seemed pleased, perhaps hoping to see a rival humiliated. As they entered the shuttle, Wilson turned to Michael. Sir, they think we are bluffing. They think we will collapse and come crawling back within a month. Michael settled into his seat and activated his secure communications device. Let them think that, Commander. They will learn the truth soon enough. He entered a single encrypted command and transmitted it to Earth. Across human space, in hidden facilities on a dozen colony worlds, in massive underground complexes beneath Earth's surface, and aboard spacecraft positioned in the dark between stars, that command was received and acknowledged. The countdown began. In 48 hours, the galaxy would learn what humanity had been building while playing the role of grateful primitives. In 48 hours, 643 civilizations would discover that the species they had mocked was about to change everything. Sarah looked at Michael with a mixture of fear and excitement. There is no going back now. No, Michael agreed, watching the assembly hall recede in the viewport. There is not. But we were never meant to go back. We were always meant to go forward. The shuttle jumped to faster-than-light speed, heading home to a world that was about to step out of the shadows and into the light. Behind them, the Galactic Assembly continued its chaotic session, none of them yet understanding that humanity had not rejected their offer out of pride or stupidity. Humanity had rejected it because Earth had already built something better. And in 48 hours, everyone would see exactly what that was. The Reckoning. The countdown reached 0 at exactly midnight, Galactic Standard Time. Across 643 civilizations, monitoring stations that had tracked human activities for 75 years suddenly went dark. Not because of equipment failure, but because there was nothing left to monitor. On Earth, the last Assembly Observation Post transmitted its final report before evacuating. Specialist Quintal, a harmonious collective member who had spent 20 years watching human development, stared at his screens in confusion as he prepared to board the evacuation shuttle. "This makes no sense," he muttered to his assistant, a young Zelthanian named Kresh. "According to our scans, human industrial output has dropped to near 0 in the past 48 hours. Their power grids are operating at minimal capacity. It is as if they simply stopped." Kresh clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "Perhaps they realize their mistake and are conserving resources before they come begging for readmission." "Perhaps," Quintal replied, but something about the readings troubled him. In his 20 years of observation, humans had never done anything that made sense at first glance. They had a disturbing tendency to think in ways that other species found incomprehensible. The shuttle lifted off from Earth's surface, joining hundreds of other assembly vessels departing the solar system. As they cleared the orbital space around Earth, Quintal took one last look at the blue planet that had been his post for so long. That was when he saw them. Ships. Thousands of ships emerging from behind Earth's moon, from the asteroid belt, from the outer planets. But these were not the clunky vessels humans had shown the galaxy for the past 75 years. These were sleek, elegant craft that moved with impossible grace and speed. "Alert the assembly," Quintal whispered, his tentacles trembling. "Alert them immediately." But it was already too late. The alerts were already flooding in from across the galaxy. In the Dravos system, home to the Zelthanian Dominion, Supreme Counselor Vrathkar was reviewing reports when his communication officer burst into the chamber without announcement, a breach of protocol that would normally result in severe punishment. "Supreme Counselor, you must see this," the officer stammered, projecting holographic displays that filled the room. They showed human ships appearing in orbit around Dravos Prime. Not invading, not attacking, simply appearing in formations that surrounded the planet like a net of stars. "How did they get here?" Vrathkar demanded, his armored body clattering with agitation. "The Dravos system is 300 light-years from Earth. Humans do not have ships capable of traveling that distance, let alone instantaneously." "Apparently they do now, Supreme Counselor," the officer replied weakly. Similar scenes unfolded across the galaxy. Human vessels appeared in every major system, surrounding homeworlds and colonies belonging to assembly members. They did not fire weapons or issue threats. They simply arrived and waited, their presence alone sending waves of panic through civilizations that had spent millennia believing themselves superior. At the Galactic Assembly Hall, High Arbiter Zenthal called an emergency session. Representatives arrived in varying states of alarm, some demanding military action, others calling for immediate negotiation. "How is this possible?" Seraph's crystalline voice carried notes of what might have been fear. "Our intelligence reported that humans possessed no advanced faster-than-light technology. They were still using primitive warp drives that barely exceeded light speed." "They lied," snarled Vrathkar. "They have been lying to us for 75 years. "Not lying," corrected Counselor Maven of the Turellian Consensus, a species known for their analytical precision. "Misdirection. We saw what they wanted us to see. While we monitored their public facilities and known colonies, they were building something else entirely." "Where?" demanded another delegate. "We had observation posts throughout human space. We monitored their resource extraction, their manufacturing capacity, their power generation. There is no way they could have built fleets of this size without us detecting it. The answer came not from any delegate, but from a transmission that suddenly appeared on every display in the chamber. Ambassador Michael Torres's face filled the screens, and this time he was not alone. Behind him stood dozens of humans in uniforms that marked them as military commanders, scientists, and engineers. Members of the Galactic Assembly, Michael began, his voice carrying the same calm tone he had used 48 hours earlier. By now you have noticed human vessels in your systems. Let me assure you that we mean no harm. We are simply demonstrating a point. The point being. Zenthal interrupted, his starlight form pulsing with controlled anger. The point being that you never understood what you were dealing with, Michael replied. You assumed that because we appeared primitive, we were primitive. You assumed that because we accepted your restrictions, we needed your protection. You assumed that because we asked for membership, we required your approval. He gestured to someone off-screen, and the display behind him changed to show footage of massive construction facilities built inside hollowed-out asteroids, hidden moon bases, and enormous shipyards concealed in the deep darkness between stars. For 75 years, we have been building, Michael continued. Not in the places you watched, but in the places you ignored. The industrial output you monitored. That represented approximately 5% of actual human manufacturing capacity. The rest was hidden in locations your sensors could not detect using technology you did not know we possessed. The delegates watched in stunned silence as the footage showed the true scale of human development. Entire planets had been transformed into manufacturing centers using camouflage technology that made them appear barren and lifeless to scanners. Asteroid fields had been converted into massive resource extraction operations that left no trace visible to standard detection methods. But this is impossible, Maven protested, his analytical mind struggling with the implications. Such undertakings would require energy signatures we should have detected. The power requirements alone would indeed be detectable if we used conventional power generation, Michael agreed. We do not. 73 years ago, human scientists achieved stable zero-point energy extraction. We chose not to share this discovery with the Assembly because we knew you would either confiscate it or restrict our access to it, as you did with every other significant advancement we made. The chamber erupted in chaos. Zero-point energy was theoretical even for the most advanced Assembly species. It represented unlimited power generation with no waste products or detectable signatures. If humans had mastered it decades ago, they could have been building on a scale that dwarfed anything the Assembly imagined. You violated the technology sharing accord, accused Seraph. All member species are required to share significant breakthroughs with the Assembly's Science Directorate. Provisional members are required to share breakthroughs that fall within approved research areas, Michael corrected. We were prohibited from researching quantum mechanics. So technically, we could not share research we were not supposed to be conducting. The logic was infuriating but sound. The Assembly's own restrictions had created the loophole that allowed humanity to develop in secret. What do you want? Zenthal finally asked, cutting through the noise of arguing delegates. You have made your point. You are more capable than we believed. Now what? Do you intend to conquer the galaxy? To impose your will on species that have existed for millions of years? Michael's expression softened slightly. High Arbiter, we do not want conquest. We never did. We wanted partnership, equality, respect. When we were denied those things, we chose independence instead. As of this moment, humanity is no longer bound by any Assembly treaty, regulation, or trade agreement. That will cripple your economy, warned Maven. 90% of human trade flows through Assembly networks. 90% of the trade you knew about, Michael replied. For the past 50 years, we have been building independent trade relationships with non-aligned species and independent colonies throughout the galaxy. While you focused on monitoring our official communications, we were establishing encrypted networks you could not intercept. He paused and looked directly into the camera, his expression grave. But here is what you do not yet understand. The real problem is not what we have built. The real problem is what you are about to lose. Threats? Vrathkar bellowed. You dare threaten the assembly? Not threats. Facts, Michael replied calmly. Over the past 75 years, humans have integrated themselves into your infrastructure in ways you never noticed. We did not just accept the menial jobs and grunt work you offered us. We studied your systems, learned your technologies, and quietly became essential to their operation. The display changed again, showing a cascade of system failures beginning to ripple across assembly space. Power grids flickering. Communication networks developing delays. Automated systems requiring manual overrides. Nothing catastrophic, nothing immediately dangerous, but thousands of small failures accumulating into significant disruptions. What have you done? Zenthal demanded. We have done nothing, Michael replied. We have simply stopped doing the things we had been doing. The maintenance protocols we wrote for your power distribution systems. The efficiency algorithms we developed for your communication networks. The safety subroutines we embedded in your automated systems. All of that was human work, provided freely over decades of cooperation. And all of it included sunset clauses that activated upon termination of treaty obligations. The implications crashed over the assembly like a tidal wave. Humans had not just been doing grunt work. They had been quietly improving, maintaining, and in some cases completely rebuilding the infrastructure that the galaxy depended upon. And they had done it in ways that were deeply integrated but designed to fail gracefully if humans were no longer there to maintain them. This is sabotage, accused Seraph. This is documentation of value provided, Michael countered. Every system upgrade, every efficiency improvement, every safety enhancement came with full documentation noting human authorship. You simply never bothered to read it because you assumed our contributions were insignificant. Now you are discovering that the primitive species you mocked had been holding your civilization together for decades. Commander Wilson stepped forward beside Michael. We estimate that assembly civilizations will experience a 15 to 20% decline in overall system efficiency over the next standard month as our contributions phase out. Nothing will break catastrophically, but everything will work less well. Your economies will slow. Your logistics will become less efficient. Your quality of life will decline measurably. Unless, Michael added, you wish to negotiate new agreements with Earth. Fair agreements between equals rather than submission to restrictions designed to keep us weak. The chamber fell silent as delegates processed this new reality. They had thought humanity was withdrawing out of pride or foolishness. Instead, humans had calculated exactly how much leverage they possessed and wielded it with surgical precision. You planned this from the beginning, Zenthal said slowly. From the moment of first contact, you intended to position yourselves as indispensable. We planned to survive, Michael replied. We recognized immediately that the Galactic Assembly was not a partnership of equals but a hierarchy with ancient species on top and newcomers serving as a permanent underclass. We could either accept that fate or change it. We chose to change it. Maven spoke up, his analytical voice thoughtful. You did not just build ships and develop technology. You conducted a 75-year intelligence and integration operation designed to give you leverage against civilizations millions of years older than yours. That level of strategic thinking is impressive. Thank you, Michael said simply. Humans are good at long-term planning when properly motivated. Being treated as trained animals provided excellent motivation. Vrathkar, who had been silent for several minutes, suddenly spoke. What are your terms? You clearly have demands. State them. Michael pulled up a document that appeared on every delegate's display. These are the terms under which Earth will consider establishing bilateral relationships with Assembly members. First, all previous restrictions on human technology, travel, and colonization are void. Second, any species wishing to trade with Earth will do so under mutual agreements negotiated individually, not through Assembly frameworks. Third, All human contributions to assembly infrastructure will be licensed technology requiring fair compensation for continued use. He paused to let that sink in. Fourth, Earth reserves the right to share our technology with any species we choose, regardless of assembly approval. Fifth, human space is sovereign territory. No assembly vessel may enter without permission. And finally, any species found attempting to conduct espionage, sabotage, or covert operations against human interests will be considered hostile and treated accordingly. You are demanding that we treat you as equals, Zenthal observed. No, Michael corrected. We are informing you that we are equals whether you acknowledge it or not. You can choose to accept that reality and benefit from partnership with humanity. Or you can reject it and manage the consequences of losing access to everything we have contributed to your civilization. The silence that followed was profound. 643 civilizations collectively realized that the balance of power had shifted in a single night. The species they had mocked 48 hours earlier now held leverage that could reshape the galactic order. We need time to consider, Zenthal finally said. Of course, Michael replied. We are not unreasonable. You have 72 hours to respond. After that time, any species that has not established a bilateral agreement with Earth will find that our contributions to your infrastructure will be permanently removed rather than simply deactivating. Choose wisely. The transmission ended, leaving the assembly in chaos once again. This time, however, the chaos was tinged with something the ancient civilizations had not felt in millennia, uncertainty about their own dominance. In the human delegation chamber aboard their flagship, Michael Torres sat down heavily, the weight of what they had just done settling on his shoulders. Sarah Kim approached with a drink, which he accepted gratefully. Do you think they will accept? She asked. Some will, Michael replied. The ones who are smart enough to recognize opportunity when they see it. Others will resist out of pride until the economic reality forces their hand. A few might even try military action, though I doubt it. Our deterrent fleet should discourage that. Wilson joined them, a slight smile on his usually stern face. 75 years of playing weak while building the strongest military force in known space. The historians are going to have a field day with this. Assuming we survive long enough for there to be historians, Sarah noted dryly. Michael looked out the viewport at the stars beyond. Earth was too far away to see from here, but he knew that 3 billion humans were watching and waiting to learn if the gamble had paid off. They had bet everything on a single strategy, prove indispensable, then withdraw that value until treated as equals. We will survive, he said with confidence he almost felt. Because we did not just build ships and technology. We built relationships with hundreds of non-aligned species who were also tired of being treated as inferiors. We built economic networks that bypass assembly control. We built a future where humanity determines its own destiny. And if the assembly tries to force us back into submission? Wilson asked. Michael's smile was cold and certain. Then they will learn what every bully eventually learns. The victim who finally stands up is often stronger than anyone expected. We gave them 75 years to treat us fairly. They chose mockery instead. Now they will spend the next 75 years adjusting to a galaxy where humanity is not asking for permission anymore. On 643 worlds, leaders and councils debated humanity's ultimatum. Some recognized it as the fair partnership they should have offered from the beginning. Others saw it as unacceptable arrogance from a species that should know its place. But all of them understood one fundamental truth: the galaxy had changed. The species they had mocked at the council had answered by ending every treaty, breaking every agreement, and demonstrating capabilities that rendered the old hierarchies obsolete. Earth had not destroyed the galactic order through violence or conquest. They had done something far more effective. They had made themselves indispensable, then withdrawn that value until the galaxy had no choice but to negotiate as equals. In 48 hours, humanity had transformed from laughingstock to power broker. And the species who had ridiculed them now faced a choice: adapt to this new reality or watch as the galaxy evolved without them. Michael Torres raised his glass to his companions. To humanity, he said simply. May we never again ask permission to be what we already are. To humanity, they echoed. Outside, human ships maintained their positions around assembly worlds. Not invading, not threatening, simply present. A reminder that the galaxy had underestimated Earth for the last time. The Council had mocked humanity, and humanity had responded not with anger but with strategic brilliance that would reshape galactic civilization for generations to come. The age of human submission was over. The age of partnership, on human terms, had begun.